60 seconds, and that's out here. It's pretty quiet. The name and title and all that, and I'll get an audio left. Go ahead.
So just I will introduce myself, or you will ask.
Tell him.
Yeah.
So tell me about yourself.
Okay, my name is Han Li. I'm a postdoc research scientist at UNC Greensboro. I got my PhD from Baylor University, Waco, Texas. Actually, I was born in Beijing, China, so it's a long distance to travel to here and then do everything I have here.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll start simple. Why do you care about bats and white nose syndrome?
Bats are very important. They play a very crucial role in our ecosystem. They do pest control, they do pollinator jobs, they do a lot for our environment. And white nose syndrome is a disease that is killing millions of bats every year. So if we don't do anything about it, most of bats will be gone very soon, and we don't even know what kind of damage we'll have.
So what was your reaction when it spread into North Carolina?
Wow. Actually, I came here after white nose syndrome was found, but I can tell you this year they found that disease in Texas, where I studied bats for many years. It was like shocking. Oh gosh, what can we do to stop it? That's my reaction.
So what did you do after it was found in Texas?
Basically, right now, there are a lot of scientists studying different areas about this disease. Some people are studying the mechanism, physiology of the disease. Some people are studying about the treatment. People like me were trying to do the ground survey work to know how many we still have left, or if there's still habitat left for them. So that's my part of the job, basically to figure out where they are and the current status of the population. That's the part I do.
So why are you and other bat biologists interested in studying coastal populations for white nose syndrome?
That's a really good question. The coastal North Carolina actually has a very long history of preserving certain species. Like about 10 years ago, we found northern long-eared bat, which is kind of out the normal range, but we found them here. And if you look at the climate, the coastal area is much warmer than the rest of the state, so it produces a different habitat. White nose syndrome is a disease that happens mostly is killing bats during winter, so it's a cold weather related disease. And when you have some area that is relatively warm, it might not be a serious problem. So right now, that's the main reason we're looking at the coastal area, see if this is possible winter ground for them to survive during the disease.
So I hear that on the coast there aren't that many caves or mines, so bats roost in trees I hear. How is that different? Why is that?
We're rolling?
So what's unusual
Unusual.
about coastal habitats and places such as Merchant's Millpond compared to like mountain habitats?
Okay. Winter is definitely warmer. That's one big difference. The water availability is probably better during the winter because in the mountains, when it's really cold, it probably will freeze. So you have no movable water, no drinkable water for bats. So the water here will be still available. And since it's warmer, it's more likely to have more insects because insects are what those bats eat. So probably a better chance to have them. And a bigger picture, probably, this area might be more isolated from the mountain area. And the population here we have can be one isolated population that is not basically communicating with the rest of the state. So the bats here, they probably don't really move around a lot. So keep them away from the disease. We don't really know much about that, but that's one possibility.
And then ask them about the trees. Why do they roost in trees?
So why do bats roost in trees on the coast
Instead of caves?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I have to introduce a term called behavioral plasticity. Basically, that means animals in general, they're able to do things a little bit out of norm to adapt to certain habitat or certain scenarios. So here, since what you said, we don't really have many caves, so bats have to change a little bit, and this is within their ability to change. So they can try trees. And another thing people found is those bats roosting in trees, they actually roost very close to the water surface, and water actually can absorb a lot of heat and then release it later, so can keep above the water, the temperature can be relatively constant, and the temperature doesn't really change much. So those bats probably choose those trees right above the water so they can be a little bit warmer during the winter. Again, the temperature is the key.
So what have you found so far in studying tree roosting bats?
One thing related to white nose syndrome, I can say, once they roost in trees, they're not able to form a very large group. So the white nose syndrome is a disease that will be transmitted by contact. Like they touch each other or they touch the cave or something, then the disease can move around. It's not airborne, so it won't move through air. So once they roost in trees, they rarely get in touch with each other. So that might be a reason that we can prevent this disease in this area.
Why do you think Merchant's Millpond is a good place to study bats and white nose syndrome. You said you've been here.
Yes,
several
yeah.
times.
This area is a state park that is actually preserved pretty well. People, the general public, is not allowed to do a lot of things here, like hunting or gathering tree products. So there's really no disturbance to bats. And of course, the logistic part, we are able to get access to the park instead of private properties we really cannot go on. But again, I think the habitat is the key. This kind of unique combination of water and trees, this kind of swampy bottom level, put everything together is a good habitat. So there are a lot of this kind of habitat, I think, along the coast, and this is one place we can actually study, we have access.
Okay, so about what you do specifically to study bats, why do you prefer acoustic detection over other monitoring methods?
The acoustic monitoring, first of all, will allow you to monitor a lot of sites at the same time. So you can increase your sample size just by using the equipment instead of having people in the field, which will cost a lot of labor. That will be problematic for us. And second, during this particular disease, handling bats might cause issues because you touch bats, the disease can get on you, and you touch another bat, and you probably will transmit that disease to that bat. So using acoustic method, we call it non-invasive. Basically, there's really no direct interaction with the animal. In this way, we won't really transmit the disease. So that's another reason we prefer it. And also, this acoustic monitoring probably will allow us to do a lot of habitat using mist netting or other traditional method we're not able to go, because we can put the detector somewhere and leave it there for a couple of days and get the data. We can even, say, get a little boat and then put it in the middle of a lake to do that. But there's really no way to put out a net and then try to catch bats, even though in the middle of the water might be a good place to catch them. It can be just challenging itself. So.
We're rolling.
So what's your favorite part about studying bats with acoustic detection? Like, what's the most exciting thing to you about it?
Definitely when you get the data, once you collect the recordings and you look at them, you found a species that is very rare. Definitely the most exciting part of that's the acoustic study.
So how do you know which species you found?
Bats, they produce high frequency sound, we call echolocation, to navigate. And each species will produce one unique frequency range. So just like we talk differently, bats, different species talk differently. So by the frequency range and along with other acoustic characteristics, put them together, each species has its own signatures, I would call it. So we use that to identify species.
So what about bats do you find interesting, and why are you studying bats?
Bats are the only group of mammals, besides actually, we can say besides birds, that's the only group of animals that can truly fly. So that makes them really unique in a way. They are nocturnal, they're active. Most of them, all the bats we have in North Carolina and the majority of bats around the whole world, they are nocturnal, so they are only active at night. And that will separate them from other animals in a way. So that's another unique thing about them. And comparing to other animals, we really know just a little about them. We don't know much about bats, so there's still a lot of questions waiting us to answer.
What have you found out about bats that you find most interesting so far? Like, just surprising or
unique. One thing, my personal research interest is urban ecology, and one thing I think is very unique and always exciting to a lot of people I know I talked to before is there are so many bats around us, like we don't even know. most people probably notice, oh, there's a squirrel, or like there are a bunch of birds in my yard, things like that. Or maybe there's a raccoon going through. But most of the people, when you talk to them, oh, you have bats in your house or in your yard as well. People are like, what? The truth is, there are so many of them around us we don't even know about. So that's really, I think, one area I always make people excited about, I think.
Is it because they hide from us? Like, why are they so good?
They're small, first of all, tiny. Most of bats probably like this size. We have like 10 to 20 grams, very tiny. So we don't really see them. And they most of them only are active at night. So that's another reason. And they're able to fly very long distance. Relatively speaking, they can fly like 30, 40 miles in one night. So even though there might be one in your yard or near your house, and they can fly away and then come back before the sunrise, so you probably won't notice them.
I have a question. Answer.
Mm-hmm.
When you were a kid, child, what did you think of bats? Did you love them?
Oh, this is very different. I mentioned earlier, actually, I'm from China. Culturally, it's very different. In the Chinese culture or the entire Eastern cultural system, a lot of countries, a lot of different cultures, actually, we consider bats as a good thing, like good fortune, good luck, which is totally the opposite way from the Western culture. A lot of them actually consider bats as evil or dark, things like that. So, yeah, so that's one thing, I guess, one big difference, my personal experience. And when I was a kid, it's always something I saw, like they would fly out. I was like, oh, there are bats flying, and that's always exciting to see them. And actually, I grew up in Beijing, which is a big city, but 20, 30 years ago, we were able to see bats, but not anymore.
That's too bad.
Yeah, the city is growing very fast. But I'm sure if they probably will come back, like here, you'll be surprised, like even in New York City, the largest city in the United States, and you can still find bats in the city.
Has white nose syndrome been found in Beijing or elsewhere?
The white nose syndrome is found in Asia as well, but it seems like the disease is not affecting Asian bats that much because we believe the origin of the disease is from Europe. So since Europe and Asia are connected, so we believe the bats in general, that part of the world, they've already developed some immunabilities to that disease. So it's not really a big deal. But North America, this whole continent is so isolated. So that's probably the reason bats here never experienced that disease before. And that's why it's killing so many of them.
Lynn, I think we Why don't you put one something like that here? Walks away a little bit because she's getting a flashback.
Like if you want more specific answers, just let me know, or you want to push it back to more general, just let me know. So
You're doing great. It's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really interested. So you've hooked me. Still rolling.
Okay, so just to wrap up, we've talked about a lot of things, but is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I had or that I should have or that you want to let us know that you think is really important?
Well, first of all, bats in general are very important. I want to mention that again, like to our ecosystem, to our economy. And we really cannot take the risk to lose them. We don't know what will happen and can be very bad. And then second, I think later today we're going to do a little bit actual real survey in the field. I hope that different survey methods I can bring to you guys and will be interesting, and I hope I can demonstrate this whole acoustic monitoring better with the equipment in the field.
If you could ask the question again, Lynn, and if you would not make a reference to earlier or later, because we don't know when
Oh, okay.
this
I see where you
cell
want.
bite is going to occur. So it should be kind of a timeless.
Yeah,
answer.
I see. I
So
see.
why don't you ask the question again, Lynn, so he can respond to you?
So is there anything that you would like to tell us that you think is really important, or that you wish I'd asked
Okay. I just want, first of all, I just want to emphasize bats are very important to our ecosystem. And we really cannot take the risk to lose them. We don't even know what will happen, which can be really bad. So that's one thing I want to mention. And second, today I brought all kinds of equipment and different survey techniques I use in the field. And I hope tonight, during the night part, and when we actually in the field, I hope my different survey methods can show you, can demonstrate like how we study bats in the field and how this acoustic monitoring method will help us understand bats better.
When you said that it could be bad, what can you talk about how bad? What do you mean by bad?
Like, first of all, we know for sure, but just based on pest control, bats can save billions a year for the farming industry in the United States. So that means all the farmers around the country, they may have to spend billions extra to get pesticide or other methods to get rid of insects. And second, we all love tequilas. And a lot of plants we use to make tequila actually is based on pollinators of bats. Bats as the pollinator for those plants. And maybe if they're all gone, one day we'll never have tequila again. Another thing, like there are a lot of communities around this country, actually, they had already developed the wildlife watching activity as their source of income, like some kind of touristy activity. And I know like examples like Austin, Texas has a very strong bat watching program, and the Northeast actually had before, and those activities are based on bats. If we don't have bats, people won't go there to watch it at all, and those local communities may lose one major source of income.
Okay. Well, thank you. Did you get any cutaways, Bob? Here, can we?
Tell me about it.
The bats probably will be this size, like smaller than a baseball. And if you stretch their wings, it's probably like this size, could be even smaller. The biggest one probably will be this size. It's a small animal compared to what they're familiar with. Like compared to dogs or cats, they're very small. Even smaller than a lot of rats you have in the house. And I do want to say bats are different from rats. Like they are not just the flying rats. That's a wrong way to say it, even though a lot of people tend to say so. No, they are totally different.
What do you mean?
Well, they belong to two very separated groups. They develop different mechanisms to communicate. They consume different food sources that separate them quite a lot too. And that's pretty much being able to fly that really make them stand out.
Can you talk about how they communicate? Because that has to do with what you specialize in as well, right?
How bats communicate with each other is really popular area right now to study. I would say we really don't know much about it. We know echolocation. I mentioned echolocation as the way for them to navigate. That's actually different from the regular between individual communication, because one bat can produce echolocation, and that sound will hit some target in the flyway and then will bounce back, and the bat will hear that and to decide either I want to fly into that thing or fly away from that thing. But that is different from the traditional communication we talk about, because like right now we're communicating, we talk to each other, my sound will reach you and you get information from me. That's the goal. But for bats, the regular echolocation is to target things that will not talk back to them. So that's one big difference from the regular communication. But bats do communicate with each other, and they actually produce different type of echolocations, different from the regular navigating echolocation. and we don't really know much about it right now. I think the biggest reason we don't know much is the technology. Say 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, we didn't really have this kind of equipment, acoustic detector, that kind of equipment we can use to study bats. But thanks to the development of technology, now we have really well-made detectors, can receive sounds very well. And that's one reason we just started studying this particular area, which is because before we never had the method, I would say.
Okay, well, I think we've got lots of good stuff, and I think 3:30.
Back there, and none of those caught anything, and neither did that one. So I'm just these.
Read that one.
Yeah. So these three caught all the bats.
Okay.
So I would suggest we just set those nets. All right.
Start getting together.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get. So, do you want me to tell you what we're about to start into?
Just do it.
Okay. You throw those in the truck. Let's go ahead and get poles off the truck. I don't like them flapping around in the wind. You want to get it there?
No, I get it.
All right, if you. So we only need
6 poles, or no, 12 poles.
Yeah. So let me see what I'm handing off. There are 2 bottoms, 4 bottoms.
4 bottoms.
So we need
2 more
2
bottoms.
more bottoms. Here's a bottom. There's a bottom.
Yeah, this is what I'll put in the
So should have just left those so I don't drive off and forget these poles aren't lashed. I'm gonna go ahead and put those back on there. Finish getting all these tied back up. A, B, and D. Yeah.
All right. Where are your ropes?
Not those.
What did we particular?
These are extras. Won't need that. So I say double 9,
Mm-hmm.
double 12,
Mm-hmm.
and a 6. That one's surprising. No, it's just a single.
Well, that may be
No, wait, no, it should be a double.
That's why I was confused. There's another 6 right there.
Hey, they're all 6 singles.
That's all right.
I may have to tie them together.
Or just overlap them.
Well, I like either way. But I might have a 6 already put together.
Okay.
If we had put a 6, I should have it already doubled.
I don't think we had it doubled that day though.
Okay, there we did. Oh, there it is.
Oh, you got
6 double.
all right.
Okay, ropes. Should have taken all that out.
And then the
9 will be A, which will be the furthest one. Yeah, and B is the closest one, and D is the short one over there, 6 meter. Make sure you're getting.
I got 9 inch out.
try and one more.
I've already given Lloyd 2.
Okay, so it should be.
Do you have your anchor ropes or just the pulleys?
I'm just getting the pulleys on it now.
Okay. And those, I don't know how those got closed, but they can all stay open. We don't need to, they don't have to be closed back. Yeah, they all have a little bit of. Apparently, I tied my knot. Well, some of the ropes have shrunk up a little bit. If I need to, we can. I can loosen this.
Yeah, keep on
If necessary, we can. Stronger than I knew. Oh, that was a little too tight. All right, it's poles and rebar and nets down to the site, so we'll have to go back and kind of figure out where we were setting those. But
Those are kind of out ropes. So
did you grab the nets, Ed? Oh, she's
she's got the
I got the
Siggy's
net.
got the net. So if you have 4 of those,
I got the reach.
okay. You got everything?
Are you going to be carrying poles? 'Cause they're-
Now if I can only remember where we are. Yeah.
down almost.
It was closer back that way, I believe.
Okay, well, here's got the first one.
Well, the first one was on the opposite side of the parking area.
Yeah.
The second one would have been
Second was probably back
somewhere right in
It
there.
was somewhere before this road. So
Yeah,
probably
and then the other one was up this way, just a ways. So you can go ahead and I'll drop those poles there. We'll come back and figure out where to put that one. Yeah, I'm thinking it was right. We've had it right in this. Yeah, right through here.
This curve and everything.
Yeah, and there's plenty of vegetation above us. So. All right, and this was a 9. Let me grab my tape measure. I'll take 2 of them. Just go ahead and get them off your hand.
Definitely could be in here.
Huh? Here you go. Maybe even back at that tree, kind of. Yeah, 9/6. That right there.
9's here. Let me do this.
You going on that side?
Okay.
Yeah. I'll have to bring the pole saw and trim a few.
If you slide maybe 1 or 2 limbs, we might have to get all the way up to the top.
Yeah, and there's really, I mean, there's a big gap behind me, but there's no
It's more
no way for them to get back here to it. So.
more open than last year.
All right.
Here, because I'm trying to remember, we had to duck
Well, bring the stakes back that way. We can.
come around.
I was gonna. That's why I was saying we'd have to trim back there because that 2 double nets would be a little bit. That'd be a little low.
By the way, if you want to. Got a pine root.
You can slide it over if you need to. Well, go side to side. I'd go back that way, maybe a touch away from the tree, but that way our distance is roughly the same. That ought to be good. All right, I'm gonna pull this pole where, kind of where.
Back up some more and put it in place.
Sorry, I got my rope on your camera.
Okay. Anytime you want to do it.
Okay.
Stick up here.
All right. You ready to check to see if we're
Still got a twist in the middle.
there? You go.
There you go.
All right. It doesn't have to. It can just go. I usually just put it above the knot, but
Don't do there. If I'm remembering how to do it right. Well, it does it different. And there you go. See?
You got it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Famous last words, right?
just don't rip my net.
No, she's picking up the whole pole.
Sorry.
Power right there.
All right, so let's go get. We're gonna need the pole saw anyways.
Yeah,
He
I
is?
think he-
Okay.
If he can find. Yeah, he got
The
it.
trimming, and then I'll come back and spread it open.
And what, did you get when your pone's put on that far into that?
So we're not gonna. We're opening it just to check to make sure it's where we want it, but we'll close it back and then wait.
Take it out. Take it
It'll
off.
stay where it's at. We'll furl it over itself and raise it up higher than any vehicle would be. So it'll just be above us until we're ready to open it, and we'll bring it back down, unfurl it, and then spread it open when it's time to net. Tie it to either the bottom of the pole or a tree next to it or something. I mean, just put 4 on there and see what happens.
Anytime you're ready.
Let me know when you're ready, Ed. We're just gonna raise it up without shower curtain rings first.
Hold on 1 second. Got a thorn.
And Floyd, if you will tighten my anchor lines a little bit, just so we can pull the pole back a touch. Well, that's a slide with a slip knot. You could.
Yeah, I got it out.
Not yet. Floyd's gonna tie me a knot there and tighten me up. All right. Pull yours. Oh, you hadn't.
I didn't pull more slack out of the beginning of it.
Just hold, if you'll hold it there for a second. You ready, Ed?
Yeah.
All right, let's go up. Ed, we're not.
Not the big one. Yeah, the little one. That one, yeah.
Yeah, the little one he's talking about. It should be fine. There's nothing really on it to catch it, just little stubs, and it should be all right.
You ready?
Oh, you ready?
Ready.
Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit, if it gets windy, I don't want to hang up on it, but it'll just be what it is. Yep. Pulse, just cut it down. Oh, I can't.
It's a little water rope.
Yeah. Yeah, we got some rope in the truck we just tie it back with. All right, so we're gonna close it back up and furl it and just leave it until we're ready to open later. Just put it on top of put everything on top of the top knot. Just bring everything up. And then just furl it all towards the road.
You want me to show you the other way to do this?
Huh?
You want me to show you the other way to do this?
High enough that a vehicle won't run into it. It should be fine. That should be all right.
Yep.
Go. Let's start again. What I'm going to do. Go do your thing and go. Open it up. Do your thing. Stop. And keep it right there and connect it. I can't see it. Okay? And action. Perfect. Move it away. Go.
You want my hands right here or?
No, move it out and go. Good. Go. Can you make it noise?
This is actually turning to a different stage. Okay, I can do it back to the stage.
Okay.
Yeah, the noise. Because actually, we don't have the noise on when we actually record overnight because that's a waste of battery.
But
So
you're testing.
yeah, I'm
that's all.
testing it. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Go. Okay. Which tree are you walking? Go.
This. It's not turning. That's it. So
Put it on. Stop. Take it back off and put it on and then raise it up. Ready? Go. Okay, I want you to look at the mic. Come on, just you're stooped down, stand up, look at the mic, and then walk off.
okay.
Hang on 1 second. You're stooped down. Stoop down to your case.
Okay.
You just finished tying it off.
Yeah, so he
Mine.
wants you to start.
Go.
Double check. Goodness, jeez. Why is not just... Check. Okay. Got the detector, got the thing back. Need to work up the work. I'm waiting to get this.
I don't know. I think it's all gonna. Tell you what, come on over this way, come in the shadow.
Careful that handle.
I'm good to go. Wow. Acoustic is much
How long are you gonna leave these out? Tonight.
Alright.
Okay.
Notice where.
Just put
You can just set chairs and tables over here to where
Okay.
Floyd is. We'll set tables right there. Extra stuff. That'll be boots, so you can put that next to the clothes.
Oh, decon, I forgot about that, so I stay away from that. I don't want.
No, you don't want to deal with decon?
No, no, thank you.
But decon is so fun.
Don't want to mess with the bats because of decon.
I'm not touching that space.
How do you have this? How does this work?
Forgot about that.
He's actually pretty good.
Man, that's quite a little picnic table. Nice. I've seen it
Isn't that the
before, but I
same
didn't realize exactly how.
No, it was put up before.
No, I think Kath, no, this is the one, that's right.
Yeah, both clipboards. We'll get a red and a white paper plate.
Oh, but you read one.
I told you.
Right.
Dirty clean?
Clean, dirty.
Yeah,
Yes,
dirty
dirty
clean.
clean.
I just said it backwards.
I
for
didn't
me.
see which one you held up first, so
So,
I wasn't trying to be contradictory.
right, dirty clean. So,
Oh,
those
wow.
and
Okay.
We can do those on the table. Let's see what else I can do. Maybe all we need out of here. Plastic for the table. I think that's all we
Just
need.
one sheet.
That may be all we need for right now.
I'm gonna put this down, I guess. Do you have a way to clip this down?
Clothespins.
high tech.
A lot of plastic.
I mean, we can cut it. This is the last of the roll.
Oh, I thought you had it.
No,
I
it's
thought
not
you were
cut.
reusing it.
No. It was the last of the roll.
It's big enough for the table. I think the chairs, the seats. We're not putting plastic on the seats. Just
No, just big enough to cover the
So
top
like-
The
of the table.
surface of the table.
Yep.
maybe 5x6 or so.
6 wide.
Maybe cut it right on that line.
Do that again, Brad, please. Hold it in one position. I'm really tight. Just hold it in one position. Insert it. Good. Thanks.
That'll work.
You got it.
I'm gonna go ahead and set some stuff over here for our decon.
Okay, where are the clothes cans?
It might work better with two.
So what we can catch that. And we'll need to put some of those out here.
Okay, we'll see that out.
We can't put a few of them up on that spring.
So just straight up ibuprofen is sufficient.
Anything over 60 apparently. You can actually use it for your gloves too now.
I've still got bleach over there
Yeah, I saw your.
and Clorox wipes, so I'll probably still use that on my boots when we're done tonight.
That's fine. How much were these bottles to get?
$3, that's why I'm not worried about spilling a whole bunch.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
I was gonna say if you go to BJ's,
Yeah.
you can get it pretty darn cheap.
Then you have to have a membership at BJ's.
We'll loan you one. Did you say there was a string hook?
So, no, so we'll actually,
There's one right
They're
there.
gonna do the
we're gonna
string
tie the string across the
the-
post.
Okay.
And
Remember
then
how they hung the bags up?
put a few clothespins out on it.
You gonna try to salvage this or just let keep it in the bottles or what? You gonna toss these in other words?
Just put it back in that pot. Oh, they empty?
Yeah.
And just, I was like,
Which box?
if they're empty, just throw them back.
I don't know how many we need, maybe 2. Oh, we probably got, I'm not sure how he does it. What?
You need batteries for your... You just want to dump, no, just dump them on here. These will be your spare batteries for...
You want to keep this box or just keep them in the, I'll put it back in.
So, you can go ahead and get some stuff. It's
Yeah, if
almost
you
6 o'clock.
If you don't go ahead, we got this.
Okay.
Do this.
Alright, I got 2 out, is that enough?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay.
Probably.
And here's the,
Yeah, let me take, we'll keep those 2 out as well since those are the previous years and that can go back in my cab. You just set it on the front seat, it'll be fine.
And since we're not.
You'll be with the camera.
And I really need to get probably pretty close
Well,
to
then I'll
you.
probably give you some scrubs to wear if that's all right.
Yeah.
But everyone else, if they're going to be outside of our contaminated
but
zone,
there's spices.
I don't know that we're going to need them to all have scrubbed up.
Okay, what?
So,
Left
Go
foot,
ahead.
right foot, remember?
put my pants on.
Put you over your head. Good look for you.
Let me know when you're ready.
Go.
Let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, start feeding it up. When you're ready.
Okay. All right. Looks good. All right, we'll move on.
This will take a little bit. Shouldn't be too big of a deal. Shouldn't be enough unfurl. It's supposed to be. There you go.
I only put my shower curtain rings on this one.
Turn your light on, Brett. Thanks.
You going up? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I can get all the way up. That's a... Okay. I may need to tie a few of these off. I think that's probably sufficient. All right. Cigna, is that net open?
We're getting it open
Okay.
right now. They need some more shower curtain rings.
Oh, gotcha. I'm gonna try out Joey's gloves and see how those work. You picking up anything different?
Yeah, I had Southeastern when I walked back through. It looked like anyway. Or Seminole. Nope, that's an evening bat.
You know your calls better than I do.
No, just make it up.
Turn your light on if you would, Brett. Your headlight. Thank you. Light. No.
It is.
Gotta leave it off.
You're doing one of the fives?
Um,
That would be about right.
Tens.
For the second one. Tens. Okay, so we get time to go then.
yeah, it's time to go now.
All right, you got bags?
I've got 3
Okay.
bags. Are
Some bag right here.
yeah, bags are right there. Yep, we're ready to go.
You want us to follow them?
It'd probably be good for y'all to be out on these first ones. Nothing in that net.
Bottom hand loose.
And go.
Got. Nothing this go around. Let's check the next one. And no bats. All right.
Try this one.
Oh, that's fine. I'll be back tomorrow, I guess. For
Got that. I can make.
I can take it.
Oh, okay. I appreciate it. Y'all got a big crop of them this year. Whew.
This is probably heterodon is probably the best way to listen to the bat call.
Well, it was my garden.
Like this is the way European
Alright.
scientists listen to.
You ready?
So
Oh yeah, I remember that. Is that hit? Yeah. Wow. Okay. I can put them under the house.
Yeah, just some places they won't get wet.
Okay.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
they're dirty.
Yeah.
Don't wash.
Okay. They need to be in a cool location or just kind of just dark and.
Well, perfect kind of temperature is supposed to be between 55 and 60, but hell, we put ours on the back porch right next to the chimney.
Yeah.
Heat with wood.
Yeah.
We're probably gonna take
Oh, net. He'll sneak up on you. Walk around it. I get tired of lifting it up and down. So yeah, I think under our house would be fine. It gets kind of
right
damp
now
in the
actually we'll have
summertime,
two different
but I think in
bats.
the winter it stays pretty dry under there. Oh yeah, consumed. Yeah. Did y'all find anything good while y'all were out? Or what were y'all?
we record a foraging activity.
Y'all kind of do a hodgepodge of everything, don't you?
Now it's flying away.
So,
Oh, nice.
Han, tell me, so what,
We're gonna talk.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk to come on over here.
for a second, okay?
Yeah.
Tell me what were we just hearing?
You actually heard a lot of different activities. I believe we recorded more than one bat. And there were multiple bats flying around first, for sure. And we definitely heard some foraging activities right here. Because the call was getting closer and closer.
I was telling Sigmund too, like this time of year. I mean, obviously there's still leaves on the tree, but there's a lot of leaves down.
Insects.
So I'm wondering if that's
at the beginning
impacting
more like
where bats are going,
just the
because there's more
regular
corridors elsewhere.
navigation, echolocation
They have a little
calls.
bit-
So those more like we call them
Yeah.
commuting calls. Basically bats flying around. They use that to identify.
Talk to me
Yeah.
right here. Tell me what we're hearing there.
Right here is we call them commuting calls. Basically, bats produce this kind of sound to identify any objects in their flyway, so they can avoid anything they don't want to fly into. And basically, that's we have here. Keep going, and then later, right here, we have a foraging call. Basically, this bat already targeted some insect, and the call is getting closer and closer, getting the sound wave is wrapping around
Had to be on the road.
insect.
There's the only one that's
And
caught anything.
We don't know for sure if this bat caught that insect or not, but we
Cricket.
know for sure the bat was trying to catch an insect right here. And
Will you play that last sound for us just now?
I'll
What you just
play
talked
from
about?
I can only play from the beginning.
Oh,
Yeah, there's no way you can choose where you want to play. Right here, this is kind of interesting that we recorded two different bats.
Can you play that for us?
Yeah, I'll play through the beginning. This will only go through from the beginning, so.
And when we hear the two bats, tell us.
Right here, we have two bats. And we just heard a foraging call.
Yep.
Wait.
Another foraging call.
That's pickerel.
I say pickerel because they're patterned. Like it's an even pattern all the
Regular
way down.
commuting call.
Gotta make sure it's not coffee. Yeah, there you go.
Yellow.
Definitely pickerel.
Another
Hell yeah.
foraging activity.
But this is didn't we have coffee out here last time?
Have a what? Oh, really? Huh. Is it a new species
Another
or
trying,
subspecies?
another foraging
New
activity.
species or subspecies?
And now the bat is flying away.
Really?
Apparently they found records of forest fires and forest.
And
And then, are we the northern end or the?
tell me, can you tell by the
Oh.
audio what kind of bat?
Yes, by the shape,
What's the
the
common name of
frequency,
it?
I can tell this is the tricolor bat. The species
And what the other
that
one's
is
just the northern
potentially
left, or
to be
southern left?
listed as endangered species. Right now, this species is going through a review process. Scientists basically is trying to figure out if the disease, the albino syndrome, is killing a lot or not. If this species is truly threatened, or the population
is that?
has declined so much to be listed or not. We believe in the next 3 or 4 years we will have a decision if this species will be listed as endangered species or not. This is right now. This kind of data is very helpful to make that decision.
And spell the type of bat tricolor.
Tricolor, 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 because the fern has different colors. It's not like really like red, blue, and yellow. Not like that. It's still pretty similar, different color.
Just keep that there and put your hand down below like you had it. Yeah, there
Oh,
you go.
Ed, did I tell you
that
about
what you had
when we were
before?
doing our alligator survey? I had a chain pickerel jump into our canoe. Yeah. Well, we were in water. It was only about yay deep,
I moved the screen
and we were going
around
through
a
like a
bit
bunch
better.
of.
were you jack jumping?
Huh?
When I first came down here, that was one of the things that a couple of the guys.
And that's the tricolor bat we just saw.
Yes.
What is that,
And they
Dale?
talked about having a light in the boat
Uh-huh.
and the jacks, chain pickerel would jump in the boat.
Really? Well, that's what happened with
I
us.
never saw that.
And then tell us
Well,
what we're seeing.
that's exactly what happened with us.
The red.
Yeah.
Well,
On
because we
the
were just
top right now,
having to traverse in very
the
shallow
scene
water
is
with
about
trees everywhere with a
amplitude
16-foot
of
canoe,
calls.
and it was a pain in the
Basically,
butt.
how loud they
But
are.
we were trying to get around some trees, and all of a sudden
below,
something
you're
dropped
seeing
in
the
the boat, and I thought it
frequency.
was a snake. Like it dropped out of a tree limb or
frequency
something.
range
And then
that
I look
sound
at the
is
bottom,
in,
and
and
it's
it's
a
way
chain
above our
pickerel.
hearing range.
What is the frequency that's hitting there?
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
this particular species produces echolocation around 40 kilohertz to about
Yeah, do you have like
70
is there a,
kilohertz.
are you looking
And
at
the
a
human
bank of
hearing
calls
range
or
should
reference
be
calls?
up to 15 to
It's just
20
kinda going off
kilohertz.
eyeball at this point.
You just memorize the frequency level and the shape.
without that device.
Without the equipment, we cannot. Without the detector, we cannot hear any bats.
Mode is called.
I just had never looked at it
Say that again, please.
Yeah, tell me
enough to
again,
know.
With that, tell me what you just said.
Without
Don
the
can hear
bat
with his
detector, we
naked ear.
cannot hear because the frequency is way above our hearing
He's
range.
got an internal high frequency detector.
His middle name is Anna.
Trying to get on the road at
The
10.
first time to do it too, it wouldn't hurt. I mean, give him extra time. Not a
Yeah,
big deal.
say 20 minutes.
Yeah. I've had home for the last few minutes.
I don't want to clean anything.
Well, if we don't catch anything either, I guess decon's a little bit easier.
Yeah. That was the only thing that was celebratory when we didn't catch anything. Last night we were netting at Bladen.
Just had to pack it up.
Yeah, that's like,
That was a night we actually caught some.
I'd probably still do our nets, but just in case something hit it we didn't know about.
because one flies over, spreading spores.
Well, in case one got in it and bit chewed its way out before we got there.
Some holes.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell that one hole, particularly on the one over here. I wasn't sure if that was a new one or an old one.
There was one, I think a possum got into it.
Yeah, there's that giant hole in that net sea down at the base.
But they're here, so we can't talk.
I know.
Everybody's breaking out Pandora.
You can sing to us.
I'm good.
I'm going to give it a few extra minutes before we head on the next one.
That's fine. I don't think it's gonna be a big deal.
Did you get something?
This is looking like an old file.
Ice of purple does make decon a little easier.
Like I said, you can actually soak your gloves, just let them dry.
Yeah, my mom finally called it quits 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Nope, the feeding buzz.
Was it moving or is that the way it looked?
That's the way it looks. It was moving a second ago. The bat apparently moved on. So pick it up again.
Oh, the bat moved. Oh, okay.
Yeah, sometimes we can pick it back up again. Sometimes it'll be overhead or.
So does that, like the Anabats will pick up, Katie did and stuff, will that thing not pick up that
this
static?
It's supposed to be set to a point where it doesn't pick that up.
Okay.
But the zero cross is picking it up. The full spectrum isn't.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mine
good.
was
I don't tell my wife, but I see spiders in my house all the time. And I don't, I just leave them. I mean, usually it's the small spiders. They're not building like big webs and stuff, but they're moving around on the floor. And
We had an argiope in the house.
oh, really?
I was like, whoa, you gotta get out.
Yeah.
Trying to catch one of my cats. I think it just came in on one of the plants.
Mm.
But it was building in the house. So
Yeah. You don't like working in the coastal plain in the summertime?
You ticks. I last year I put one out of my ear, like
Mhm.
right here. Ooh, so disturbing.
was so hot too. So
Yeah, it was warm.
I think Kevin got stuck at
I grew up
where was that? Fulbright.
smaller.
Mm-hmm.
The technician was driving, and
They got stuck on base. Yeah.
he
You got to be careful on the sand down there.
he didn't really know anything about driving on sand. He was going really slow.
Yeah, yeah.
Too slow.
I've never gotten stuck in. We had one technician get stuck in the sand while we were out there, but our biggest problem was the puddles. Because you don't. I mean, you're not the only person driving through those. There's Humvees and tanks driving through those, so they may look like they're 6 inches deep, but in the middle they may be 2 feet. And I got into one time with we had a Ford F-250 diesel, and it was just heavy, and it had locking hubs. I didn't have them locked, and so I got out in the middle of this puddle, and it just so it stopped. So I was like, crap.
Yeah, just walk on up to it and stop.
Okay.
Go. Okay, go. Take that off.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go. Do me a favor. Just pick the card up, have it up there, and we're shooting real tight, and then lay it, no. Back up here. Just lay it back down where you had it before. Go. I think it was up here.
Okay.
Do it again, please. Go. Lay it down.
Okay.
I think you did it with your right hand.
I think you did.
Right with my right hand.
Yes, please. Go. Go.
Okay, I'm about to do it.
Go ahead. Where are you going to plug that in?
Actually on my side,
Well, I knew that.
on this.
Go.
If you want, I can go over the species we have, but I don't feel comfortable to confirm that. I can show which potentially can be one, but that basically means we need multiple nights of recording. Do you want me to start now?
You need to just move your computer.
We're good, man.
Okay. And now we're looking at the recordings from last night. The first bat we recorded was 7:01, very early in the evening, right after sunset. And it was probably an evening bat. Then just a few seconds later, we recorded another species. This is tricolored bat, and more tricolored bat. And about 5 minutes later, we got another species. This is a Myotis from genus Myotis. With just one recording, I cannot confirm the species, but very likely little brown bat, which is a species that is impacted heavily by the white nose syndrome. And going into the night, this Myotis species was with us for a few minutes. And we got more recording, the same species, and more tricolored bats. And around 7:40, we got another species, and potentially big brown bat. And around 8, I can confirm the presence of big brown bat. And this one is an interesting one, around 8:30. This one looks like a northern long-eared bat, but the recording is too short. I cannot confirm with just one recording file. I need more overnight recordings to decide. And we have some activities over the whole night. And the very last one we recorded was this morning, right before 7. The activity was not very high, but I can be sure we recorded 3 or 4 different species at least. And certainly we need to record more if we want to be 100% sure what species we have here.
Would you talk to Lynn now on the, and so Lynn asked a couple questions.
Okay. So based on the results you just showed me, how do you feel about what you found and this experience so far?
Clearly you can see we recorded more tricolored bats, big brown bats, evening bats, and then the species that we're mostly interested in, the northern long-eared bat, we had only one file, and it's not even that good. It's very short, and we need more recording. So you can see, just relatively speaking, that species is probably less common than other species I mentioned here. So yeah, that's another evidence we have to show this particular species, northern long-eared bat, is definitely impacted by the white nose syndrome. But again, there's a potential, I think, based on what we have found here before. About a decade ago, we had capture record in this area, And from the summer, we have been doing in the past 3 years, we recorded northern long-eared bat in this area. So we still feel very confident this is a potential habitat. And if we have cure for the white nose syndrome, or if this species itself can develop the ability to be immune against this particular disease, I think there's still a chance we can save the species.
So how does this, the circumstances of this experience in particular, how do you feel about that, and how it affected the results?
Because our monitoring mostly happened during the summer, so right now it's a little bit different season. It's a different season and the temperature is a little bit lower. I think this kind of recording outside of the regular summer sampling window is actually very valuable, and we hope we will be able to do more of this fall or winter monitoring in the future, so that will help us understand the conservation status of that species or about habitat better. So I would say this is definitely a very valuable experience, and this kind of activity we should do more, and we hope more people can participate in this process.
So last night there was a full moon, which we didn't really foresee, but how do you think this full moon might have affected the activity of the bats and thus your results?
Generally, bat biologists think full moon will negatively impact bats. So on a full moon night, there should be less bats because of the moon is so bright. The predators of bats can see better. So in general, there should be less activity on a full moon night than a regular night. So yeah, so that could be a factor that we had lower lower bat activity last night than normal. But again, we need more to confirm this actually, whether the full moon has truly an impact or there's any kind of link. Nobody actually has particularly studied this question.
So how would you say that what you do, the acoustic detection, how that fits into the bigger picture of bats and white nose syndrome? Like, how would you describe it as part of the bigger picture?
The acoustic monitoring basically allows us to see the general distribution of bats over the landscape. And if we keep doing this, if we have multiple years of monitoring, and we can estimate the general population trend of species of our interest. So through this method, we should be able to tell if the population of particular species is growing or declining. So that will help us to make decisions what we can do to protect bats. So this is very baseline, basic data that will help a lot of conservation decisions in the long run.
I think we're good. Do you have one more pressing question? Or?
Yeah, there was like one last question.
Okay, one last question because we're running out of tape here.
Oh, okay. So how do you think that an ordinary American citizen what do you think they could do to help the situation for trying to save bats from white nose syndrome?
We actually do have a citizen science project that regular people can actually check out our detector to help us collecting data. That's definitely one part they can help. And preserving your own backyard habitat, like putting out bat boxes or keep dead trees in your backyard instead of moving them away, those things, little things can definitely help. And of course, if you're able financially to support state parks or any kind of conservation areas, that will definitely help.
How do you feel about the way the importance of this has been spread so far? Do you think it's been enough, or you need more?
we probably will need, if this coastal area is a good habitat for species that is heavily impacted by white nose syndrome, I would say we probably need more conserved area in the coastal plain. So in the future, this species, they will have a better place to live.
Thank you. Do we need to get any?
This could be potentially an evening bat.
Evening.
Evening bat. Could be a red bat. Those two species are very similar acoustically. And we have, this is clearly a tricolored bat. More tricolored bat. More tricolored bat. And right in the middle in this particular file, we can see this bat try to catch an insect. We don't know if it was successful or not.
Somebody have a black pen where he can point it out where it's catching the insect. Somebody have a. Well, we don't want a Holiday Inn pen. As you just point out what we're seeing.
Yeah, right here we have a tricolored bat, and the acoustic activity turned from regular commuting calls into foraging activity. So we can tell this bat was trying to catch an insect. We don't know if it was successful or not, but at least it tried. And this is a different species. This is very typical evening bat call. Let me see if I have a better one. Right here we have.
Hang on 1 second. Start again. Go ahead.
Okay. Right here we have a recording that is potentially from genus Myotis, which includes northern long-eared bat, little brown bat, a lot of species that is impacted by white nose syndrome. And we need more, because of its special protection status, we need more information to confirm. But I suspect this is a little brown bat. More tricolored bat.
Point to the tricolor.
Let me find a good one to record. This is a very typical tricolored bat.
Can you show us the northern long-eared you talked about?
Let me find it. I'll just here, this is a big brown bat.
Okay, 1 second. Okay.
This is the big brown bat that recorded.
Could you speak up a little bit?
Okay. This is a big brown bat. Another species we recorded last night. This one is possibly a northern long-eared bat.
Hang on.
Okay, wait 1 second.
Okay.
This one is potentially, possibly a northern long-eared bat because of its high frequency, but you can see the recording is very short. So I cannot confirm its presence. I need more recordings like this. If I have a few more, then I will be able to say that's a northern long-eared bat. But at this point, we can just say possibly northern long-eared bat.
And point to the highest frequency and tell us what it is. And get your marker out of this away and then put it in and point right to it when we say go.
Go.
The northern long-eared bat has a characteristic high frequency that will go above 100 kilohertz. And this one is reaching, but you can see it stopped here. Probably that bat flew away, so we did not get more recording. So I can say it's possible, but we need more to confirm.
So you know it's a northern long-eared because of the frequency,
Yes.
not because of the waveform.
The frequency.
You want to say that?
Well, the waveform is also,
Oh, okay.
so it is multiple. Like, it's really, I can go on and explain everything.
But
Yeah.
okay, but the frequency
Okay.
is high.
Yeah, the frequency is probably the most characteristic one. Do you want to?
Fail if you push me.
I'll try not to. Then.
No pressure.
All right, yeah, we're rolling.
All right. So just go ahead and introduce yourself
Okay.
and your position.
Sure, I'm Ed Corey. I'm the inventory biologist for North Carolina State Parks.
And ask some spells in.
Yeah. Can you spell your name?
Sure, my name is Edcorey.
Okay.
Good. Okay. So first, I just want to ask you generally, what is white nose syndrome and why is it bad for bats?
White nose syndrome is a fungal disease that affects cave roosting bats. It's a cold-loving fungus that really seems to thrive well in these cool environments in caves. So where the temperature is usually not above 55 degrees, the fungal spores seem to really persist well.
Pause. That was good. Okay, Jim.
So what's different about coastal populations like Merchant's Millpond than other populations where white nose syndrome is more common?
So as of right now, we have no detection of white nose syndrome in the coastal plain. Most of the species here spend their winters in trees or other large cavities. They're not really spending their time in caves, at least in North Carolina. So the species here theoretically have not been exposed to white nose syndrome. As such, species that are occurring here in decent numbers could potentially become recovery populations for species that have been affected in the mountains in western Piedmont. Good God,
It's amazing, isn't it?
And,
He's still.
It's a loud one.
Okay, we're good.
so why is netting an important part of white nose syndrome research?
Netting actually gives us a chance to see how the bats are doing physically. So while we can detect bats acoustically, we're not able to see how those individuals are faring. So if an animal's been exposed to white nose syndrome, we should be able to see scarring on the wing membranes, on the exposed surfaces like the tail, the nose, things like that. So without being able to actually see them up close, we can't tell if they're actually exhibiting signs of white nose syndrome.
Apart from white nose syndrome, what is threatening bat populations, especially on the coast where it's not as common?
Well, habitat loss is a big thing. A lot of these species, particularly things like southeastern myotis, Raffinus big-eared bats, like these large cavity trees, things like tupelos and cypress. So they'll actually go in there and use that as their refugium, their place to get away and hide. With a lot of swamps being cut down, that took a lot of those big cavities away. So.
I'm gonna have to see if we're rolling.
Can you speak a little bit more about how specifically roosting in trees is better than roosting in caves in regards to white nose syndrome?
Well, I don't know if it's better, it's just a different adaptation. So in the mountains, you don't have these large trees with large cavities. So as such, these big populations of bats, particularly those in the genus Myotis, the smaller bats, have used these caves for thousands of years. In the coastal plain, they don't really have that option, in North Carolina at least. So they're using these trees because it's a big place where they can all commune together. They use them in the summertime for maternity roosts where the females all come together to give their pups. And in the wintertime, it's a good place for them to all retreat. They'll also, in addition to using cavities, use loose bark under on the trees and such. So.
It's bee animated, but the more you go like this.
Right,
it's
right.
Like we're on the Titanic.
Sure.
Thanks.
So what are the next steps in the fight against white nose syndrome?
Oh man, good question. The next steps are to continue to map out where it's spreading to, trying to figure out where these populations are that are being affected by it.
One second.
Yeah, that's fine. I got to think about that one anyway. Next steps, man, that's a hard one.
Sorry, gentlemen, we're picking you up with our super sensitive mic.
Sorry.
We'll be done in just a second.
Unless you want to be on TV.
Come forward some. Let me see.
We're rolling.
So what are the next steps in the fight against white nose syndrome?
So we're going to continue monitoring for the disease. We're going to be doing winter checks in caves and mines. We're going to continue looking in the summertime for bats that show signs of white nose and basically keeping the monitoring going. Even now we're seeing new states, new counties showing up with new populations of white nose. We're finding it more and more as we keep detecting it. So that's the goal.
So what's the furthest east that white nose has moved in North Carolina?
There are populations in the central Piedmont that have shown up, 2 counties. One was actually bats showing the signs of white nose. The other was a detection of the fungal spores at a site. But it's kind of gotten into the central Piedmont. Luckily, it's not gotten anywhere into the eastern Piedmont or coastal plain yet.
We're talking a lot about what we can do to save bats. Why do you think bats are worth saving in the first place?
Bats are incredibly beneficial. They save farmers billions of dollars each year in pest management. They're integral to the ecosystems around us. Think about how many mosquitoes attack you in the summertime. Imagine how many more would attack you if you didn't have bats around eating their entire weight every night. They're integral to everything around us.
Is there anything you'd like to add? Any questions I didn't ask that you...
Not really sure, honestly.
Can you talk to us about last night, what happened last night, what you found or didn't find?
Sure. So last night we were able to do the 3 nets over at a site nearby, and we didn't have any success in the nets, but this time of year is very challenging, particularly the fact that we had a full moon last night, which can create a lot of problems with capture.
Just wait.
Yeah, I was...
Please.
Sure.
Okay, Chad.
So again, last night we had the 3 nets out in a nearby site, and we didn't have much success, partly because of the full moon. The full moon really affects the bats can actually see quite a bit more. They're actually a little bit more wary because of predators, so they're not as likely to fly into the nets. Also, the corridors that we used to put these nets up had changed quite a bit from the last time we were here. With the leaves falling off, the bats have more ways of getting around these different obstacles in the woods. We did detect lots of bat activity, at least at the beginning of the night, but it seemed like they were just going up and around where we needed them to be. But there was at least some bat species there.
Hey. Is there anything else you can think of?
Not particularly.
Are you okay diffusing, lady?
Doing a great job.
You are.
You're diffusing wonderfully.
I feel like one of those statues.
Yeah, that's
in a
right.
museum,
Are we
like
good?
a
Yeah,
wax
we're good.
statue.
We're
Go.
good. Do we need just B-roll walking down the road?
Okay. All right. Go. If you will do an ID, please.
Can you just start by introducing yourself? So tell us your name, position, and spell your name too.
Okay. My name is Brandon Sherrill. I'm a mammologist with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. BRANDONSHERRILL.
We're good.
Okay. So can you just start by briefly telling us how you got into studying bats?
So when I started on with the Wildlife Commission several years ago as a mammologist, that was part of my job responsibilities as a statewide biologist. Part of our focus is to monitor bat populations across the state.
So what benefit does netting bats have as far as studying bats goes?
So when we're able to get a bat in hand, we can put an identifying tag or band on that individual, so that if we come back to that same site or catch that individual in subsequent years, we can follow the survival of that animal, and we can kind of monitor the population over time and get an estimate of survival.
How does netting help with white nose syndrome?
So while we have a bat in hand, we can examine that individual and see if it has indications that bat has been exposed to the white nose fungus. So we're not actually seeing the white fungus that was evident when they're in their hibernation, hibernacula. But we're looking for damage to the wing membrane, so there's scar tissue that can be present, that can be an indication that they were at least exposed or had an infection during the hibernation period.
So what brings you to Merchants Millpond as one of your sites for netting?
So the Merchants Millpond is in the coastal plain, and we've been expanding our survey efforts in the Piedmont and coastal plain the last couple of years. And so we worked with state parks as an opportunity to use them as a location to net. We know we have a variety of bat species here, and last year we were able to capture northern long-eared bat. And a few other species as well, so that's why we're using this site to come back to as a monitoring site.
So it would be good if they left that white nose bats in this area.
Have you guys ever found any white nose syndrome in bats in this area?
So to date, we have not found any evidence of white nose syndrome in the coastal plain. Most of our monitoring effort previously had been in the mountains. That's where, again, where most of our caves and things are at. And so those bat populations of the ones where we've detected the fungus. We have detected a few, 2 more sites in the Piedmont, but again, as of yet, we have not detected that in the coastal plain or at Merchants Millpond State Park.
Is there anything special about the habitat in the coastal plain or Merchants Millpond specifically as far as bats go?
Well, these kind of swampy areas have a lot of trees that, particularly tree bats, species of bats that use trees for roosting and roosting habitat. A lot of times you'll have things like cypress and things that have cavities at the base. They're hollow up into the tree itself, and so bats use those as places to roost, both during the maternity period and during the winter.
So for this part, can you walk me through each step of the netting we did last night? So what you did and why for each step?
Okay. So when we first come to a new site, we want to make sure that we're selecting locations to place our nets so that we can be as effective as possible at catching a bat first and foremost. Bats, you know, they have a biological sonar echolocation, so they can actually detect where our nets are placed. So we have to select a spot for the net that forces the bat to actually have to fly down through that corridor because they have no other avenue to get to their destination where they want to be. So when we're looking down for a placement for that net site, we're looking where vegetation is on both sides of the net, but also we have canopy cover above. So it's basically funneling bats down that corridor into our net. So once we've selected our sites, we have to then measure off the distance that we need. We have different length of nets that we use, again, appropriate for how much space we have between the corridor. So we'll select the appropriate size net for that. Requires us to put in, rebar or some sort of stake in the ground to use to erect our poles that we'll put in place. Again, depending on the height of the structure that we have to work with, we may use a single high net. We may put 2 nets together and double stack those. And in some situations, we'll actually have triple highs, we have 30 feet of pole that allows us to extend our net up to reach to the canopy, so that we have fully blocked off the avenue that the bats will be using. So we'll get our net set usually an hour or so before sunset, so those are in place. We'll wait to open those nets until closer to dark when bats will start flying. We don't want to be catching birds at that time, and because birds will be flying up until dusk or sunset. Once it's time to open nets, we'll just in progression open the nets one at a time. And once nets are open, we're going to be monitoring those nets every 8 to 10 minutes to ensure that if bats get in the nets, we're there to remove them to process. Unlike birds, which generally will get caught in a net and they can move around, but generally if they're small enough, they're not going to be able to escape the net. Bats, on the other hand, have sharp teeth and can chew their way out of nets if they're in there for too long. So we want to not only avoid having them escape, because then we can't process them and place a band on them, But they also will damage our nets. They'll chew holes, and eventually you have to repair the net or replace it. So we try to be efficient in checking our nets on a regular schedule every 8 to 10 minutes. Yeah, and then once we catch a bat, that requires us to extract the bat from the net. If they're, within a close distance, we can just remove them immediately. Sometimes you have to lower the net back down so that you can extract them if they're caught from a, higher up in the net. And then we'll bring that bat back to the processing station and begin our workup process, which would be, again, taking measurements of certain morphological measurements, placing the band on the individual, checking for, like I said, wing damage, if there's evidence of white nose syndrome and that sort of thing. And then that bat gets released, and then we continue on with our monitoring of the nets for captures.
Why is there a decontamination process, and why do you have to wear scrubs when you're?
Yeah, so white nose syndrome is a fungal disease that's impacting bats. It first arrived in the U.S. in like 2006. We had our first documented case in North Carolina in 2011. Once it was present here in the state, we obviously wanted to take precautionary steps following protocols that have been established for bat monitoring and bat surveys across the U.S. So we want to basically prevent us as biologists from spreading spores from one site to another. That goes for both our mist netting, summer netting work, but also our hibernacula and winter surveys as well. So when we're doing our mist net surveys, like I said, we basically just don't want to get fungal spores from white nose syndrome on us, and then us go to a new location and transfer those spores. So basically with the scrubs and with our boots, those are all things that we can take off at the end of the night and get bagged up, and then they go through a decontamination process where we either submerge them in water that's of a temperature that can kill those fungal spores. So our nets also go through that as well, and ropes. Anything that's soft will go through that hot water submersion. And then all of our other hard equipment, like our poles and our table and chairs that we use at the processing station, will get sprayed down with either isopropyl alcohol or bleach, chloric bleach, or some other wipe that's been approved in the decontamination protocols. Again, just to prevent us from taking that equipment from this site, and the next night if we're at another location, we didn't move those spores from the bats that we may have handled and transfer them to another bat that we may handle elsewhere.
Why do you think you didn't catch any bats last night?
So, probably multiple factors. Just in general, catching bats is not an easy task. As I mentioned, we place these nets in areas where we're trying to force bats to go through.
Just stop a second.
Okay, Chad.
So why do you think we didn't catch any bats last night?
So last night there was probably a variety of factors that prevented us from catching bats. For one thing, bats are generally difficult to capture. They have that biological sonar that allows them to detect objects that are in their path, their flight path. So unlike birds, when we're trying to catch birds, we're basically hiding a net and birds can't see it and they fly into it. With bats, we're basically trying to force them to go through the net because they don't have any other avenue to take. This time of year, it's we're getting into October. Leaves are starting to fall off trees. We also had a full moon last night, so that made the nets even more visible, just even to their bit. They can see the nets as well, not just through sonar, biological sonar. But with fewer leaves on the trees, that also provides for more avenues to get around nets and things like that. So where that net site would have been productive earlier in the summer, this time of year maybe not quite as productive. It allows the bats to get around them.
Wait a second.
Yeah, we're rolling.
So there's no white nose syndrome in the coastal plain now. What are the chances you think that it'll be able to make its way out here?
It's hard to say. There's the thought that because there's limited caves in the coastal plain, that white nose syndrome is not going to be present here. The fungal spores of the white nose fungus, which is Pseudogymnoascus destructans, requires certain temperatures for it to be able to thrive. So without those kind of environments, those cave environments, the bats in the coastal plain are likely not going to be exposed, or at least that's the hope. So we're going to continue monitoring bats in the coastal plain and the Piedmont, on into the future. But as of yet, like we have not detected it in the coastal plain.
Do you think that means that the coastal plain could be seen as sort of a haven for certain bat species that are affected in other areas?
Yeah, I think the coastal plain could be a refuge or a reservoir of certain species that may be having significant impacts, say in the mountains where those populations have significantly declined. We might not see those same impacts here in the coastal plain.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add? Anything we didn't ask you?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, we good?
All right. Thank you.
All right. That was good. Give me one more and we're okay. Here, if you want to see it.
Oh, yeah. Over here. What's going on there? Uploaded video and say what kind of bad is that?
See if you can work the light closer to it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even feel comfortable catching them, and moving them. Like the guys last year were, they were handling bats like no problem, but I don't know enough about them.
Yeah. Does that have the back guano right there?
No problem.
Just do a good job washing
Wipe it.
clothing.
Come back a little bit. Come back.
This way?
There was this whole area right over here. It was just a huge pile of guano because for whatever reason they liked these spots for a long time. But I don't know if the dirt gobbers might have filled it in.
My daughter had tons of guano on her windowsill.